G'day guys, I've just returned from the Victorian Team Championships where my team won the gold medal, placed first overall in this absolutely ripper teams event in Melbourne, Australia. So I wanted today to talk to you about each game, talk about my list, talk about the way the pairings went, and share those insights with you guys so that hopefully you can replicate these results when you approach teams events yourselves. So with that being said, let's jump straight into the video.
Look for the blood god.
G'day guys, I wanted to thank the team from the Army Painter for sponsoring this channel and this video. The Army Painter are donating a Warpaints Fanatic flexible triad set for every tournament game that I win. And all you have to do to go in the running to win a set yourself is comment below with which colour you would like to win if your name was randomly selected. The Army Painter are then going to go through the comments section and select people at random and send out sets of these absolutely fantastic paints. If you'd like to browse their range, there are links in the description below for where you can look at all of the amazing paints that these guys have available, pick which ones you would like to receive if you were lucky enough, and then comment that below. That's all you got to do, nice and simple. Now let's get back into the video. Alrighty guys, I think a logical place to start is with my list, so we'll break that down in detail. You will notice that this is a variation of the 30-nator list. I basically took this list to, or a version of this list to the WTC, which is the biggest teams event in the world, and had really interesting results. Bit mixed, some really good results, some not so great. And basically I took some feedback from people in my Patreon and in my Discord server, and together we workshopped a variation of that list that included a few more of the popular elements like Angron and 8-bound and created a bit of a hybrid list. And that's the list that I decided to take to the VTC. So let's have a look at it. Alright, before we jump into the list, however, I should probably break down some details about this event. So it was a 5-man team event, and it was run out of Melbourne, Australia by the team at the Risky Rollers. They put this show together. It was an absolute ripper of an event. There was 5 rounds, and there was a total of 12 teams, so 60 players, and some of Victoria's strongest players were in attendance. I'm not going to lie, my team was absolutely stacked with 5 members from the outgoing Team Australia for the WTC, so we were bringing the power, we were bringing the heat, and we all brought really interesting and stacked lists, so it was a really powerful lineup, and we were expecting some fantastic results, and we did deliver on those, but I look forward to sharing those with you. But I just wanted to lay that all out before we get stuck into talking about my list and the rounds themselves. So let's get stuck into it. Alrighty, here is the list that I took to the Victorian Team Championships. So you can see that it's called hashtag 20nators, because this list, unlike my WTC one, did not contain 30 Terminators. So for this one, we had Angron, we had Lord Invocatus, so that's our 2 characters. In our battle line, we had 2 units of Jackals. Then we had 2 units of regular 8-bound, 2 units of Exalted 8-bound, and then 2 units of Terminators. So a slight departure from my WTC list. And basically the idea with this was that I wanted to include Angron because a lot of people in the Discord community basically said that they really enjoyed playing with Angron. They liked the 30-nator idea, but they really enjoyed playing with Angron. So they're like, can you fit Angron in with the 30 Terminators? And whilst you can do that, there was also a lot of people that were saying that they really enjoy the scout move from Invocatus, and they really enjoy their 8-bound. So I was basically going to create a hybrid between the 30-nator list and the more popular Angron 8-bound centric World Eaters list. And basically the way that the list was designed to function is Angron does Angron things. He's also really good for providing reroll hits to those Terminators, which pumps their damage up, which came in clutch in a few of the games that we'll talk about. But basically, Invocatus was there. His goal was to provide scout to the 2 units of Exalted 8-bound, and then we have 2 units of regular 8-bound, so all 4 of those units are going to be able to scout move, which is really powerful, as you would know from traditional World Eaters lists. And then the idea with the 2 units of Terminators is, generally speaking, you would deploy one on the table in somewhere safe that's able to threaten multiple objective markers, and then you would put the other one in deep strike, ready to rapid ingress on turn 2 or turn 3. And then, of course, you've got the Jackals there. They're there for sticking objectives, screening out your opponent, and doing actions and that sort of stuff. And then Lord Invocatus is actually pretty good at doing all that sort of actions and stuff himself, because he's not particularly powerful in combat, but once he's sent the 8-bound out, he's provided that scout move, he's then a really, really good action monkey that's quite strong, quite tough, and just quite a decent value unit. Yeah, so that's the list. Now let's get into the games. All right, here we have round one. So my team was called Did You Know That Mice Purr? And we played into EMR. We had Jeremy Martino into Lockie Callaghan, Thousand Suns into Dark Angels. They got a 10-10 draw. I played my World Eaters into Duncan Callard's Adeptus Sororitas Sisters Battle, and he got a 13-point win out of me. So I actually lost my first game, which was kind of disappointing, but I'll explain why in a moment. We had Matt Morrisoli got a 19-point win into Merrick's Chaos Knights with his Chaos Space Marines. We had Reese Cunningham on his sisters got a 12-point win into Luke Beveridge's Necrons. And then we had Josh Brody's Dark Angels get a 14-point win into Carl McKenzie's Drakari. So yeah, so I got paired into their Sisters of Battle. Now, on a good day, the Sisters of Battle World Eaters matchup is actually quite hard because they had like a ton of castigators and that sort of stuff. In fact, what I'll do is I'll pull up the list and we'll go through it. But basically, you know, a ton of castigators, a ton of damage that's really, really effective at dealing with things like Terminators and 8-bound. And then I'm also going to show you guys the map that we played on so that I can articulate why this matchup was so difficult for me. But first, let's have a look at Duncan's list. And Duncan was also an absolutely fantastic player as well. Alright, so here's Duncan's list. So he had Bringers of Flame, he had a Dialogus, Morven Val, Saint Celestine, Triumph for Saint Catherine, 2 Immolators, 3 Castigators. He had 1 with Battle Cannon and 2 with Auto Cannons. Then he had a couple Dominion squads, a unit of Paragons, a couple small units of Seraphim, and a big unit of Seraphim. So a really cool Sisters of Battle list that was really, really interesting. Here's the mission pack. So this is the map that we played on here. Now, as you can see, this is, what's it called? Secure and whatever it's called. Table corners. And basically, in my deployment zone, I'm the red deployment zone down here, you can see there's actually only 1 ruin in that deployment zone that I was able to hide anything in, which meant Angron had to deploy behind that ruin in order to remain unshootable by all the Sisters of Battle. And the Sisters of Battle, as most of you will know, are deceptively fast. So Angron had to hide back here where he couldn't be shot. I had to have Terminators in there, and everything else was more or less exposed. And the worst part was, from that safe space, there was nowhere that I could move to with a standard move that was able to stay safe. So normally one of the ways that you play World Eaters is you jump from safe ruin to safe ruin, you know, and you try to do that, or you try and, you know, go from staging place to staging place. This table, and this was, he got put up, and my captain, because I wasn't captain for this, he put me into it, and my opponent got to pick the table, and he picked this table, which was fantastic selection by him, because I had nowhere to hide, nowhere at all to hide, and he had so many guns. And further to that, this central gap here between these 2 purple ruins in the middle is actually less than 4 inches wide, which means Angron can't charge through there, which basically meant that when he deployed all of his tanks and his Paragons and all of this sort of stuff along here, basically, if I moved out, I'd be in the open, and then he'd be able to move into the center and blast me. And if I stayed hidden, I wasn't going to be able to get to him. And even if I did come out, with Angron's movement, he was going to have to go all the way around these pieces of terrain. He couldn't charge through the middle, which meant he was able to basically castle his tanks up together, and there was nothing I could do about it. It was really challenging. So the fact that I was able to get, you know, the points that I got, I was actually pretty happy with, because when I saw the table, saw the matchup, I was like, what is happening here? Like, who let this happen? This is a problem. Which just goes to show that even when a list is really good in teams, sometimes you don't get the matchup you want, or you don't get the table pick that you want, and it can be quite challenging. So that's basically the way that the game went down. He basically sent some stuff so that he could control this bottom right objective. I sent some stuff up to control the top left objective. We both controlled our homes, and then we basically fought over the center for most of the game, but he ended up, over the course of the game, winning that fight, simply because anything that I'd throw out there, he had so much position there to blow it up, and I had no way of engaging with all of that stuff that was positioned to threaten the center. Whereas normally what I'd do with the World Eaters is I'd move Angron up so that next turn he could jump over and hit all of that stuff, which would then force your opponent to either spread it all out or would force your opponent to do something really risky to try to take out Angron. But that option wasn't available to me in this matchup because of the terrain layout. So that was round one. My opponent was an absolute legend, really, really nice guy. But yeah, he walked away with the win, which was fantastic. So regardless of I was the only person on my team to lose that game, lose a game that round, and we got the 62-point win into the 38-point loss. So that's a win for us on the board. Let's have a look at round two. So round two, if I'm remembering correctly, I was into Eldar. So we had, we got an 80-point win into their 20-point loss. So this was a big win for my team. We had Jeremy played into Depta Sororitas and got a 10-point draw with his Thousand Suns. I played into Charlie and got a 14-point win into his Eldari, which was a really interesting game. Matt Morosoli got a 20-point win with his CSM into Tau Empire. Josh Brody got a 16-point win with his Dark Angels into the Imperial Knights. And then Reese got a 20-point win with his sisters into the Adeptus Custodes. So let's have a look at Charlie's Eldari list. It was a really interesting list, and then I'll talk a little bit about the game itself. So he's called it Hero Hammer. And basically he's got a Sermon, an Autarch, an Avatar, a Death Jester, a Farseer, Fugan, and Corandus. So tons of characters. And each one of these characters is an absolute monster in their own right. Then he had a big unit of Guardian Defenders, a small unit of Dire Avengers, a couple of Falcons. One of those Falcons he had just two characters in, Corandus and the Death Jester. And then the other one had the Dire Avengers with a Sorman in it. Then he had 2 units of Skyweavers, a unit of Striking Scorpions, which had Corandus in it in Strategic Reserves. And then a couple units of Warwalkers and some Swooping Hawks. And that was Charlie's list. So this game was really interesting. Basically, I've played Charlie a ton of times at tournaments, and every single time I've gotten a pretty decent sized win out of him. He's a very competent player, he knows what he's doing, but he gets a little bit shook sometimes, and basically I think as soon as he saw me, he was like, oh no, I'm going to lose because I'm paired into Dean. And as a result, he overlooked a few opportunities that I think he probably would have seen if he was paying a little bit more attention. But basically, he sent the Avatar straight up the guts into that center objective and had a bunch of stuff sort of staged ready to respond to anything that I sent out. I sent 8-bound to go kill Warwalkers early in the game, and then after he'd sent out that Avatar into the middle, I threw Angron and a unit of 10 Terminators into the Avatar, failed to kill it, then he's put a bunch of damage on Angron, and then we went into his turn, and then I got to fight with Angron again, failed to kill him. So I've fought with Angron twice now. He's then fought back and killed Angron. So I'm like, wow, I've lost Angron after having charged the Avatar and fought him twice. And the Terminators didn't do much work. I eventually killed the Avatar, and then from there, it was going downhill pretty rapid for the Eldar player. But overall, it was a really good game. The takeaway from me, though, was that Avatar is just such a monster. He's so hard to kill when he's using those fate dice to automatically pass saves and things like that, and that half incoming damage with the 4-up invulnerable save. It's just so swingy. There was a few rounds of combat there where Angron would go like 9 hits, 8 wounds, and then he'd just pass like 7 saves. And I'd be like, oh my god, and then I'd roll my 1d6 damage, and it'd be like I'd roll like a 3, and because he's got half damage, that 5 damage hit comes down to 3 damage. It's like, oh wow, I'd have to fight him like 8 times to kill him. So just be careful if you're playing into a list like this. That Avatar, make sure when you're going into it, you want to shoot it with all your Terminators, because the dev wounds are actually a pretty effective way of dealing with the Avatar. You want to throw a grenade at it with Lord Invocatus, because you can't just trust Angron to do it. He's not like, if he fails all of his saves, yeah, sure, Angron will rip its head off. But you've got a budget for him spiking up, and that's something I failed to do. But at the end of the day, the Eldar were very squishy, and most of the stuff I was able to just pick up with relative ease. Even the Terminator's shooting was really, really good. Like, the Dire Avengers come on, and it's like, yep, cool, the Terminators move up, they shoot the Dire Avengers, and then they charge the bikes, that sort of stuff. But yeah, so that was round two. Really, really good game into Charlie, and that's a 14-point win for me. Let's have a look at round three. So, round three, what do we got here? All right, so round three, we got paired into a team called Paired Well Again for Once. And this is, we got a 64-point win into their 36-point loss. Now, this was actually one of the teams that had some significantly, powerful players on it. This was basically Team Victoria. This was the other half. So in Australia, we have the annual Australian Team Championships where each state puts together all of their best players. And basically, Team Victoria is comprised of these two teams here. So this is all the state representative players, if you will, more or less. So basically, Jeremy Martino got a loss with his Thousand Suns into Lachlan Booth's Black Templars, a 7-point loss. I got a 17-point win into Ed Askey's Grey Knights. Matt Morosoli got an 18-point win into Adam Camilleri's Astra Militarum. Josh Brody got a 2-point loss out of Stuart Trainer's Tyranids. And then Reese Cunningham, as always, got a massive 20-point win out of Alex Franz's Necrons. Now, a few notable things in these matchups before I move on to my specific round. Reese and Alex Franz had played the exact same lists into each other the weekend before at the Oceanic Championships, and that game was streamed live on the Risky Rollers YouTube channel. So if you want to check that game out, that they'd played the previous week. And it was a relatively close game, but it was still a win for Reese. So we knew Reese was favoured going in, so when we paired him, we're like, yep, Reese, you know what to do. Just do the exact same thing you did last week. And he managed to pull off an even bigger win, which is fantastic. And Matt Morosoli into Adam Camilleri, there was one notable moment there where essentially Matt had explained, Matt's got all the accursed cultists, that's typical CSM list, and Adam Camilleri had like a bunch of Bulgrin and stuff like that, I believe. I could check. Actually, I might as well check. But yeah, he had a bunch of stuff, and basically what happened is he's got command squads, tank commanders, jungle fighters, chimeras, Bulgrin, ratlings, a bunch of Rogel Dawns. So just a bunch of general sort of bits and pieces for guard. But basically what happened is Matt Morosoli explained at the start of the game what Blood Surge was, how it worked, the specifics of how the interactions were and whatever. And then basically he did, Adam scouted forward a bunch of Ratlings. Then he basically moved those Ratling forward to block Matt Morosoli's movement. And then he shot the Accursed Cultists, which then let them Blood Surge move into the Ratlings and kill them. And then, post at the end of the movement phase, at the end of the fight phase, CSM can do a move because he was the Renegade Raiders. So he was then able to move in Adam's turn in the fight phase, and then he went in and destroyed him. So lesson there is basically just don't ever shoot the Accursed Cultist units unless you're planning on wiping them out, or more or less wiping them out in a single volley. And then, going into my game. Now, my game with Ed was absolutely fantastic. Ed's one of my favorite people to play. I love Ed to death. And it was a really, really swingy and interesting game. So Ed had Grey Knights, he had Crow, he had a Dread Knight, he had Grandmaster Dread Knight, he had Drago, then he had a big unit of 10 Terminators for Drago, he had a small strike squad, he had an Interceptor squad, he had 3 Dread Knights, and then he had a big Purifier squad as well. So a big Purifier squad, big Terminator squad, bunch of Dread Knights, and then a few small bits and pieces was Ed's list. Really, really cool list. And basically, so Ed's an absolutely fantastic player. There were a few moments in this game that just really did not go his way, that created massive swings in my direction. The whole game, I was ahead by a few points, but I was running out of stuff, right? And I was like, cool, I'm able to keep this up for a while, but probably turn 5, I'm going to be tabled, and he's going to get a big tail end swing. and the end result is probably expected to be something like an 8-12 his way. Right? That was what I was expecting, because I was like, I'm ahead now, but I'm running out of stuff. But there was one turn where basically he drew Marked for Death and Overwhelming Force, I think it was, and I had basically ran out of all my small trading pieces, so I had to send one of my Terminator units out to get up into the middle of the board to kill some stuff off an objective or whatever. And he drew Mark for Death, and I only had 3 units on the board. So I was like, well, I guess they're my Mark for Death targets. He then threw basically his entire army at them. He threw like 4 Dreadknights worth of just shooting into them and then combat into them as well. And he basically killed them all the way down to a single Terminator left. And that's through all of their shooting, the combats on multiple Dreadknights, and I was able to pull casualties in a clever way to basically prevent some of them from being able to fight, that sort of stuff. But basically what that meant was he didn't get his Mark for Death, he didn't get his Overwhelming Force, because that unit survived, but importantly what that meant was that there was 2 Dreadknights now that were still in engagement range of that Terminator, which then meant they weren't able to use Mists of Deimos, which meant my second Terminator unit was able to go in and pick up both those Dreadknights. And now with those 2 Dreadknights gone, he doesn't really have the focused damage to pick up that Terminator unit. There was also a really interesting moment there where I threw Angron into the middle. He then, in his turn, he dropped Drago's Terminator unit going for a 6-inch charge, because they get the +3. And because he's dropped that 9 inches away, I've then rapid ingressed my Terminators down behind Angron, so that when he charges Angron, I'll be able to heroically intervene into his Terminators, which was really, really good, because basically he was then like, cool, he's got the 10 Terminators into Angron, that's enough to kill Angron, but it's not enough to kill the Terminators as well, and then the Terminators are going to hit and wipe out a lot of those guys. So he was umming and ahhing, he decided to split his attacks roughly 50-50, and when he did it, I just put the -1 damage on the Terminators, knowing that Drago himself probably kills Angron, so I'm like, that's fine. -1 damage on the Terminators, which meant he actually didn't kill... I think he killed 1 Terminator, which was good for me, because it activated +1 to hit on those Terminators, and then those Terminators killed like 6 of his Terminators. So he's basically dropped them down, gone in, charged, killed Angron, but then lost most of the unit in the process, which was really, really good for me. And then towards the end of the game, I resurrected Angron anyway, and Angron was able to drop down, get an 8-inch charge from Deep Strike, took him off of his home objective, and then with the combination of that happening and him just failing to kill the Terminators, that's what swung it from what was looking like a relatively close game that I was going to lose into a game that I got a big win out of, because I was able to take him off his home, basically able to take out all of his Dreadknights with Angron still alive, and it sort of ran away on him. But yeah, so the few takeaways from that was the Terminators really showed their strength in that there's fucking 10 of them, right? Like, that's one of the things I cannot understate enough, is if that was a unit of 8-bound, even Exalted 8-bound, they would have died, right? Whereas the fact that they're Terminators, and there's 10 of them, and they have 4-up invulnerable saves, and they have 2-up armor saves in cover, just means that all of the AP1 shooting you're getting 3-ups against, you know? All of that high AP shooting you're getting the 4-up saves against, you know? And then there's 10 of them that he has to chew through, as opposed to 6. It's a significant spike in durability, and that was such a huge swing, because it denied him like 7 victory points and prevented him from being able to use his Mists of Deimos in the subsequent turn, which those 2 things alone flipped the game. So big ups on the Terminators there, and yeah, big ups on the rapid ingressing into heroic intervention. That was really effective as well. So yep, that was really good. Let's jump into the next round. Round 4. This one we played into Schrodinger's Skill Ceiling, which this was my favorite team name out of the event, and we always have a lot of fun with our team names down here in Australia. So we got a 76-point win into their 24-point loss. We had Reese Cunningham on his sisters get another 20-point win out of Matt Thomas's Tau. We had Josh Brody got a 16-point win into Ben Ashton's Adeptus Mechanicus. I got a 7 point loss into Nick Burrow's Thousand Suns. Matt got a 20 point win with his CSM into Blake's Chaos Demons, and Jeremy got a 13 point win in with his Thousand Suns into Hugh Titchener's Astra Militarum. So once again, I was the only person on the team to lose a game that round, which is disappointing. But we all know that the World Eaters Thousand Suns matchup is something that you generally want to avoid where you can. And we'll go through Nick's list now, and we'll talk about the game in a moment, and you'll sort of get a bit of an understanding as to why that is the case. So his list name I quite like. It's called Their Wizards Ari, as in Ahriman, but as Harry Potter reference. He had, it's a relatively meta list, so he had Magnus, then he had 2 Exalted Sorcerers, 2 Infernal Masters, 1 with Arcane Vortex, 1 with Umbrellic Crystal, and then he had a Thousand Suns Sorcerer as well with Lord of Forbidden Law. Then he had 3 units of Rubrics, all small ones. Had a unit of Cultists, had a unit of Zangors, he had 2 units of Spawn, and 3 Mutalith Vortex Beasts. So that was Nick's list. Really, really cool Thousand Suns list there. And now this one was really interesting. So I got bottom of the turn, and then so second, I was going second, and in his first turn, he basically scouted up his cultists to move forward, and then in his first turn, he draws Area Denial and what's the one where you do the action in the center of the table? The old deploy teleport homers, whatever it's called now. Investigates, no, whatever it's called. The one where you do the action in the center. So basically, he got a free turn of secondaries. He just moved that 1 scout unit up and was like, boop, boop, secondaries achieved. And he basically didn't have to do anything. He also put some spawn out onto the objective on the right. This was a supply drop, so Hammer and Anvil deployment supply drop. So there was the 3 objectives in the center, and we're at either end of the table. So he basically put the cultist in the center objective, some spawn on the one on the right, and then a single sorcerer on the one on the other side, right? And then in my turn, I get secure no man's land and no prisoners. And I'm like, oh, well, this is actually good. I'll be able to do both of these, right? So I basically threw a unit of 8 bound into his unit of cultists and a unit of 3 exalted 8 bound into his sorcerer. And I was like, cool, if I kill both of those, right, I'll then take those objectives off of him, and I'll get secure for 2, and I'll get no prisoners for 2, and then, you know, we're back in the game, right? And the 3 regular 8 bound failed to kill 10 Thousand Suns cultists. He passed a lot of his 6-up invulnerable saves, and as a result, because I failed to kill them, he was able to leave the ones that were within engagement range of my guys, so I couldn't pile in onto the objective. So that's no secure no man's land and no prisoners. And then on the other one, the 3 exalted 8 bound failed to kill the sorcerer. So again, through Cabal point manipulation and all the stuff that Thousand Suns can do, they basically failed to kill him. He tanked a lot of 4-up invulnerable saves, and that therefore there was no prisoner there or secure no man's land over there either. And I'm like, oh my god, so not only have I killed nothing in my first turn, I've just traded 2 premium 8-bound pieces to do it. And I was just like, this is all, like, the Thousand Suns matchup is already so hard, and for that to be the opener was a disaster. A few things did go my way later in the game, though. I was able to get Angron to charge some rubrics and pick them up, and then consolidate onto the central objective to deny primary. I was able to then resurrect Angron after he died, and he was able to then jump back onto that central objective when Magnus was there to deny primary again. At the end of the game, I scored 0 primary for the entire game, but Nick only scored 5 points of primary for the entire game. So it was a really, really like low scoring game. We got all 5 turns done, but we just spent the entire game denying each other primary, which was really, really cool. But he just took it away on secondaries, because all of the secondaries, like I said in the first turn, I failed those. And then he was able to pick up the 8 bound, pick up a few other bits and pieces, which then meant I had to do actions with things like Terminators, which you just can't afford to do. So the Terminators coming out to kill things, and I'm like, okay, I guess nobody is recovering assets this turn. You know, I guess nobody is, you know, doing containment because I just don't have disposable units. All my units need to be dealing damage. So I basically focused on trying to take away, and this is my advice for when you find yourself in one of those situations where you don't have the disposable units. The best thing to do is to take away their disposable units. So I was using my Terminators to pick up the remaining couple of cultists with some bolter shooting, then to pick up the spawn and to pick up like a Mutalith Beast or whatever, or the Zangor and the whatever they're called, the little disc Zangor dudes. Like pick up all of that sort of stuff. And now, sure, I can't score my secondaries anymore, but neither can he, because now if he wants to kill my Terminators, he has to commit things like Magnus or a Rubric unit, but now that Magnus or Rubric unit aren't achieving his secondaries. So that's my way of basically going, look, I know I'm not going to win the game from here, but being a teams event, it just as important to minimize the loss as it is to win. You know, every point matters. So I basically just decided, look, I'm going to go for all of his small stuff, and I'm basically going to try to stop the bleeding. And that's what I did, and got that relatively reasonable result. Like, I'm not happy with it, but it's better than nothing. And that's so that was round 4. And then we go into round 5 here. This was into Snake Eyes was the team name, and we got an 81-point win into their 19-point loss. So Jeremy played his 1,000 Suns into their 1,000 Suns and got a 12-point win out of the mirror match. Morosoli played his Chaos Space Marines into Brian's World Eaters and got a 20-point win. Josh Brody played his Dark Angels into their Tau Empire and got a 15-point win. I played World Eaters into Jared's Chaos Space Marines and got a 14-point win. And then Reese played his sisters into the Don's Space Wolves and got a 20-point win. So Reese I think he got almost all 20s except for one round. So Reese is an absolute monster. But let's have a look at Jared's list. This is the final round that I played into, and it's a really, really cool list. So it's at 1985 points. So he had 15 floating points that I'm guessing he just couldn't spend. But he took Packbound Zealots, which is quite interesting. I thought this was a mistake. I was like, this list is just objectively better if you make it Renegade Raiders. But it was actually quite interesting what he was able to do with some of these units, which we'll talk about in a moment. So he had Cypher, he had 2 Dark Communes with no enhancements, and they were both Chaos Undivided. 3 Dark Communes, no enhancement, all Chaos Undivided. Then in his battle line, he had a Cultist Mob and 2 Slaneshi Legionary units. Then he had a Chaos Rhino, and then he had the obligatory 3 units of Accursed Cultists, all also undivided, so that those Dark Communes can join them. Then he had 2 units of 3 Bikers, 3 Predator Destructors, a Vindicator, a Beast of Nurgle, and a unit of Nurglings. So really, really interesting Chaos Space Marines list. And basically, this list was putting out a ludicrous amount of damage. Those Predators, almost every time they shot, they'd be like, yep, 2 las cannon shots, and they'd get 4 hits. You know, the Vindicator would just absolutely go nuts with those Dark Pacts where they're getting the sustained hits. It's just, I think a lot of people have moved on to the newer detachments and forgot just how crazy sustained hits on 5+ actually is. And how much extra damage that puts into the unit. And then these Accursed Cultist bricks, they can basically get +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and then a stratagem for reroll wounds. Their damage capacity is absolutely phenomenal. So this was a matchup where I was like, I don't even know if I can win this. I know I can kill the Accursed Cultist bricks. Like, the Terminators are actually really good at killing that. Angron is actually really good at killing that. But he can also kill me really, really effectively. And basically, I have 2 bricks of Terminators. He has 3 Accursed Cultist bricks. So it's going to be an interesting little trading game. I need to make sure that I sequence those trades in such a way that I get maximum value out of my Terminator units before they die. And that's what I was able to do. So there was a few moments there where he basically got he got the first turn, and he basically threw some Legionaries onto the central objective. I was then able to combat those with 8-bound. Then there was one point where I had sent some 8-bound out, the regular 8-bound, to kill one of his units of bikes. He then rapid ingressed a commune behind his bikes so that when I charged him, he could heroically intervene. So what I did is instead of charging those bikes, I actually charged backwards into a unit of Nurglings that he had positioned to try to block my Terminators in a ruin. And as a result, he's now rapid ingress this commune for no value because I've charged backwards. And then when I've charged backwards, I've now got 8 bound where his Nurglings were and Terminators behind those 8 bound. Then in his turn, he moved that one that he rapid ingressed up, charged the 8 bound, and then I heroically intervened in with my Terminators. So I basically took the trick that he was planning to do to me and flipped it and did it back on him. And because when he'd done the charge, all of his big guys were within base contact of the 8 bound, when I've heroically intervened with my Terminators, I was able to put him in such a way when none of his big guys were really going to be getting attacks into my Terminators. Which meant he basically just put all of his attacks on the 8 bound, killed them, but then I put all of my attacks on him and killed him. And I had Angron nearby for rerolls, which was really important because I only just killed him. So that was a really exciting exchange there, because then I now had that unit of Terminators out that just gained all that extra movement from that heroic intervention out in the open, and then it ticks over to my turn, and I was able to then advance and charge that Terminator unit deep into his lines and pick up a second Accursed Cultist brick. So that one unit of Terminators was able to trade for 2 Accursed Cultist bricks, and that's exactly what I needed to do to, bring this game into a reasonable position. Because I knew that if it was just a matter of he puts out 1, I charge it, kill it, he charges me, kills it, I charge him, kill it, then he charges me, kills it, I'm going to be out of stuff, and he's still going to have stuff. So I was like, I need to find a way to get one of my units to kill 2 of his. And that's how I was able to do it with the heroic intervention, which it looks like he was trying to do the same thing to me, but because he had more pieces around, I was able to basically adapt my strategy on the fly. He was absolutely blowing those Terminators up with his Predators, but one of the other good things about the Terminators is because there is 10 of them, what I was able to do is basically there was like a central ruin where I was able to put like 2 Terminators on that side of the wall, 2 on this side of the wall, 2 over here, and then 2 like strung out behind a ruin over here, so that when he started shooting at me, I could basically look at which units haven't shot yet, and then I could remove casualties in such a way to prevent them from being able to shoot, because each Predator was killing 2 or 3 Terminators. So I was basically removing them in such a way that when the unit got down to only 3 Terminators left, the only Predators that hadn't shot yet couldn't see those 3 Terminators. And as a result, he wasn't able to wipe the unit, and that was on a turn when he drew Mark for Death. So once again, I was able to prevent my opponent from getting Mark for Death. He had Mark for Death and Cull the Horde in the same turn, and all he had to do was kill that unit of Terminators and he would have scored both. But because the Terminators are tough, and there's a lot of them, he wasn't able to score either, which was really, really good for me. The game ended up real close in terms of the battle. Like, I was tabled by the end, and he still had all 3 Predators. But on points, I was just pushing him off primary all game. This was the one where it was Purge the Foe, Kill More, Hold More. And I was just constantly getting more kills than him, because he had small units like Legionaries, he had Nurglings, he had the Beast of Nurgle, he had lots of characters, things like that. One of the things that I was really concerned about going into this matchup was Cypher, but fortunately for me, he didn't really use Cypher aggressively. Cypher spent most of the game sitting in his backfield, and I think his thought was he knows he's going to need Cypher for that turn when I save up lots of command points and I have my go turn and I send everything in. So I think he was hoping to save Cypher for then. But because of the way that the game was being played, there was so much stuff happening early with heroic interventions and CP interrupts and stuff like that, that by the time it got to the turns when Cypher was up there, I was pretty much done with command points at that point. I was not really needing them anymore. So I think he probably, if he had played a little bit more aggressively with Cypher, it could have made a pretty big difference in the way that the game played out. And also, if he didn't go for that 8-bound charge and let me heroically intervene with my Terminators and get that double trade, that would have also changed things a lot as well. He could have just gone, okay, cool, I'm just going to fall back. I'm just going to stay back out of your charge range, wait for you to bring out your Terminators and then pounce on them. If he had done that, that would have been much more effective. But because he got greedy and he's gone, well, I've rapid ingressed him, I might as well go in for a charge, that really flipped the game on its head. So, yeah, that was the 5th game. So, in total, I got 3 wins, 2 losses. A loss into Thousand Suns and a loss into Sisters. The loss into Thousand Suns, I think that's relatively expected for a World Eaters list. You know, Thousand Suns is probably our hardest matchup. And then the loss into the Sisters, I attribute a lot of that to the table. That table was very hostile for me. But also my opponent played an absolutely fantastic game. He knew what table he needed to select, and he knew exactly what he needed to do with it. So kudos to him for that. He played like an absolute champ. And that rounds out my results from the Victorian team championships. So like I said at the start of the video, this video has actually been sponsored by the Army Painter, and basically what they're doing is they're giving away one of their War Paints Fanatic flexible triad sets, which is a set of 6 paints designed for perfect layering and things like that, so 6 paints of the same color. And basically what they're doing is they're giving one of those away for every tournament game that I win. So all you have to do to go in the running to win one yourself is comment below which of those flexible triad sets you would like. And then basically what Army Painter are going to do is I'm going to send them a link to every video that I post that's like this, where I'm talking about tournament games and my wins. And then they're going to go through the comment section, pick out a winner or two, and send a few sets of paints. So if you want to get in on that, chuck a comment below. Or if you just want to comment on the video in general, feel free to do so. Apologies if this one was a little bit fast and a little bit haphazard. I am just still coming over a cold, so... but I wanted to get this out. I didn't want to make you guys wait because the event was, you know, a couple of weeks ago now, so I didn't want it to get old and then forget what happened in it. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. As always, I very much appreciate you, and if you want to like, subscribe, comment, all that good shit, you know what to do. And also feel free to join our Discord community. That's where this list that I ran came from. We basically had a little bit of a workshop over there. A lot of people talking about the 30nators list and how much they liked it, but not everybody owns 30 Terminators. Most people are still building the Angron 8-bound version, so we decided to workshop together to come up with a hybrid list, and we do a lot of that sort of stuff over in that Discord. So if you want to join that, check it out. You can find information on blogforthebloodgod.com. And that's where you can get access to our Patreon and our Discord server, and also a ton of merchandise like this t-shirt that I'm wearing. We've got dice there, we've got objective markers, we've got all kinds of cool stuff over on that website. So thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will talk to you in the next one. Cheers. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high-quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high-quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.